And then I would like to, talking about companies, I would like to talk to introduce Marie-José Baartmans, that is managing director of BREYTNER, and actually it's one of the companies that was participating in the programs presented by Sonia, and Marie-José will share experience with electric trucks, and here we can see one of them in the introduction of the slides. So then, Marie-José, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fernando. So welcome in Rotterdam, everybody. My name is Marie-José Baartmans. I'm co-owner of BREYTNER, which is a zero-emission transport company. And you are now looking at currently the love of my life for the moment then. It's a brand new Volvo zero-emission electric truck. It has been on the road since 2 weeks. And I think the interesting thing from this truck is that it's deployed for delivering bricks, pavements for streets, and we don't, not only have an electric truck, but we also have an electric crane on the back of the trailer. So the whole combination is without any emissions and with a lot less silence, which is great when you operate in inner city areas. And we have a female driver on this truck, which I always like to mention as well, because you don't see that often. Pablo, if you could share the next slide with everybody. So BREYTNER is a core business zero-emission transport company. We are located in Rotterdam. We operate throughout the whole country, but mainly Randstad area, which is between Amsterdam, Utrecht, Rotterdam, a little bit more south. And we've started this company, we founded this company in 2014, and we actually had the first trucks on the road in 2016. And have been one of the front runners within the Netherlands. I think we have the second biggest fleet of zero-emission trucks at the moment. I think only Simon Loos is beating us, which we're trying to set straight, of course, because I don't like to lose these kinds of prestigious battles. We have a fleet of rigids. Four of them you see in this picture. We have crane trucks you're going to see, and tractor units as well. And all of our trucks that are on the road are being subsidized, either in the early beginnings by EU project Freeview, by subsidies coming from the city of Rotterdam, City Lab subsidy, or DKTI, as Sonia mentioned as well, the second and the third round project in 2019 and 2021, as well as the recent purchase scheme ANZ, the truck you just saw with the crane on it has been purchased through ANZ subsidy. A short conclusion is that it is very, very difficult to get trucks on the road without subsidies at the moment, and I'll get a little bit further into that later on in the presentation. We normally always work with diesel operating transport companies for a plan B. So we have a joint venture with Vlot Logistics and HN Post and Zoner, which are two conventional transport companies. But if you have an agreement with a company to deliver bricks and you're in a front running position and have to deal with innovative technology that sometimes shows a little bit downtime, we still need to deliver all our goods. So we have a thorough plan B with these companies so that they can, in the end, if needed, help us out with the diesel truck and make sure that we deliver bricks or deliver whatever we are doing in that day. And we have a little bit more than 500,000 zero-emission kilometers driven at the moment. Pablo, if you could help me out. I think the reason why we started this company, and that's interesting to tell for, especially if there are countries that are not up to speed yet with regulation or subsidies. For us, it was very much the local air quality in Rotterdam. in 2014, we had an area in the city of Rotterdam that was highly polluted. And if you would live in that area, you had a shorter life expectancy of 3 to 5 years. So the city decided to close down a main traffic artery for heavy duty vehicles. So no diesel vehicles were allowed in that zone and are still not allowed. It is the only zero emission zone that we have in the Netherlands. And coming from a conventional transport company ourselves, a family owned company with loads of diesels, and after we sold that company, we figured this is a good opportunity because at the same time in 2014, 2015, we saw a lot of other cities struggle within Europe. London had the same issues, Berlin had the same issues with poor air quality, and they were working with low zero emission zones or low emission zones, sorry, or other schemes to get the transition starting. So for us, it was a great opportunity also because in 2015, the traffic artery was closed down, but there was also an announcement by the city of Rotterdam that they would make a bigger zero emission zone by 2020. And that led us to inquire with all truck OEMs, like, we want to purchase zero emission trucks. If you could go to the next one, could you help us out? We want to buy rigids, we want to buy tractor units. But at that point, truck OEMs were very much busy with continuing to sell diesel trucks, and they were not ready for our questions and demand yet. So we had to resolve to working with converting companies. You buy a diesel truck and then you take the diesel engine out and then you make an electric drivetrain underneath the truck and put battery packs on it and start driving. So these are our first 4 trucks that we started with in 2015 and 2016. We put them on the road, and they have been operating in all sorts of deployment. Next slide, please, Pablo. This is, for instance, removals. Basically because some cities were quite up to speed with their tenders and asking zero emission transport in these tenders. So public procurement really helped in that area. And we could do some removals for instance, the city of Rotterdam, city of Arnhem, and it became more and more strict. So that was a way to scale up a little bit. Next slide, please. Here you see some construction logistics, especially in Rotterdam, where we have a lack of houses and we have a housing problem. There are going to be a lot of building sites in the upcoming years. So we will see big demand on construction logistics, and we decided to invest in that as well. Next slide, please. And this is a company that does the laundry for hospitals and nursing homes, for instance. Very much inner city work as well, and they wanted to make sure that they were ready for when the moment of zero emission zones started in these inner cities. They wouldn't be surprised and make sure that they could still pick up dirty laundry and deliver the clean laundry as well. Next slide. And here you see the supermarkets, which are one of the industries that has really taken steps in the Netherlands and are being front runner with us. And due to the fact that they have loads of stores within these inner cities, and they want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be able to replenish them. And they have a big fleet, a couple of thousands of rigids, and the tractor units go in and out of inner cities every day. So for them, they have a big issue if they're not ready on time. So they have started to really adopt early and experiment and experience the zero emission driving. Next slide, please. And then in 2019, we wanted to go a step further because rigids are okay, but these were 19 tons and they could drive around 200 kilometers, but they could only take 9 tons maximum of payload with us. So they were quite limited. And we saw demand coming for more heavy duty vehicles. So within DKTI2, we developed a crane truck, 50 tons crane truck, and the crane that you see on top is also completely electric. It's a 40 ton meters truck, and you see this type of vehicles driving around a lot for construction logistics. Next slide, please. And what's interesting is it operates quite a lot for cities as well. So the city either pushes the constructing companies, and the project developers to use zero emission transport, either by motivating them with agreements they make all together, or pushing them by giving them very little space to use during their build. So that it's difficult to maneuver in inner cities, and they try to motivate them to use zero emission transport very much. So, and they use their own purchasing power as well. So here you see lantern posts being transported, and on the right side you see a part of the Dutch Parliament with the little crane on it. And on the left is also interesting. You see cables that are being transported, and those cables go in the ground to strengthen our electricity network, mainly for the whole transition towards zero emission transport. So that's a complete circle, which is really, really good. Next slide, please. And here's an overview of some other things we transport. We can name ourselves these days an international transport company because we run a weekly route between the Port of Rotterdam and the Port of Antwerp, which we are quite proud of. It's a cooperation together with Sender for a company called Cabot. They produce carbon black, and it's interesting to see this is more of a supply chain process, nothing to do with inner city or nothing to do with zero emission zones. But this is a company that has, Cabot has quite big carbon footprint within their primary process. And the primary process is difficult. The production process of carbon black is difficult to, on a short term, have less emissions on. So they try to look at secondary and tertiary processes like scope 2 and scope 3, what we call, to improve their carbon footprint. And transport is in one of them, and it has been working great so far. But also container transport within the ports, and for instance, sewer pipes, which you see. Again, purchasing power from a city that tenders infrastructural projects for with zero emission transport as much as possible, at least a certain percentage, and not only the price of transport is then the most important. Next slide, please. And this is a picture where I'm very proud of because it looks like a happy bunch of lovely trucks. These are the trucks that run for a company called Innocent Drinks. Probably have all had a smoothie from them by now. And they have a completely new electric factory in the Port of Rotterdam. And orange juice is one of their main ingredients. And that arrives in the Port of Rotterdam. That's pretty much near the city center, and we call it like a mobile pipeline between the arrival of the orange juice in the fruit port, and then we bring that orange juice into the factory. So these trucks do nothing but drive between those two spots every day, several times a day, to make sure that the factory is never without any orange juice. So there are tanker trailers behind them. We take about 35,000 kilograms of juice with us on a daily run, on every run, and it's 5 days a week, and it's non-stop driving. And what we do is juice in, juice out, which is really interesting. So we deliver the juice to the factory, and at the same time we put electricity in the trucks for charging. So there's a win-win situation because you don't have to make an extra stop for charging. So these more heavy-duty trucks are still from the converting companies, because we started this project in 2021, are also on the road by a DKTI project, the third round in 2021. And they have a range about 150 kilometers. And that we charge them 2 or 3 times a day during the unloading with 180 kilowatts charging infrastructure, for a little bit more in-depth technological information. Yes, next slide, please. I have to speed up it a little bit, I see. And yeah, this is a nice picture as well. It's the second Volvo within our group, recently on the road with an electric cement truck. Cement is probably not the right word, but you know what it is, I think. Next slide, please. So where are we coming from a business-wise perspective in the Netherlands? We're basically following the transition of public transport. They're quite a lot ahead of us. That has to do with the fact that the public transport works with longer term contracts. You can have a 6 or 8 or even 10-year contract for public transport. And in the Netherlands, if you are a haulier and you have a contract for 1 year, well, you're quite king. If you have 3 years, you're absolute the best. But if you want to invest in these type of vehicles with the current investments that go with it, 3 to 4 times the investment of a diesel truck, then we need to have longer commitment for our customers. So most of our trucks are in a dedicated solution, and they're driving for our dedicated customers. We have some project capacity to try to find customers that are enthusiastic, but first want to run a pilot to get them to have some experience, to see if a lane works for them, yes or no, and if they're enthusiastic, then we try to invest specifically in a vehicle for them. So we're in the early beginning of the transition. We have in the Netherlands, of these heavy duty vehicles, maybe at the moment, maybe we have 30, 40 on the road, but with the new ANZ subsidy, I think we're going to see more in the upcoming 2 years, maybe 200, 300, 400 vehicles. So that's great, but still in the early beginnings, if you look at the total amount of vehicles that we need to transfer into zero emission vehicles. The thing is, diesel transport is still so much cheaper than electrical transport. If you know that a diesel truck is 100,000 euros and the zero emission trucks that you see here are almost 400,000 euros, even with lower electricity prices in the old days, before the war, we still had no TCO parity. By far not, actually. It doubled the transport cost. So that's what makes it really difficult. And we are working only with intrinsical motivated customers, basically. So if you want to do it for, if you think you can do it because you think it will be cheaper, at the moment that's still, even with subsidies, not possible. Next slide, please. So what we see as a main driver in industry at the moment is basically the push coming from truck OEMs that are a little bit scared for the EU regulations that are set in 25. They need to reduce their diesel emissions by 15%, and they know they will make about 13 or 14%. So 1 or 2% that they're lacking at the moment, they are able to compensate by putting zero emission trucks on the road. And there's been some estimation that's about 10,000 vehicles that they should put on the road altogether with all the truck OEMs within Europe. So it will be a game of which country has the highest subsidy that they will try to push their zero emission trucks towards, to make sure that they're going to able to meet the contingent that they need to make good on comparison to the diesel part. And that's interesting because at the moment we see prices going up of the electric trucks, battery electric trucks from truck OEMs, but we expect by maybe halfway 2024, if they have a good view on how far they are within the 10,000 vehicles that they need to put on the road, they might, if they're not near that number, they might lower their prices. So it's interesting to follow up on. There's been a big lobby coming from the truck OEMs towards the EU, because in 2030 it was planned that they should reduce emissions further by 30%. And at the moment, the proposal is 45%. So I think it's quite an exciting time to see where it's going. If it's going to be 45%, we'll see a big uptake on zero emission trucks for sure, because they're never going to make it, even not with an Euro 7 development. So interesting times from this point of view. Next slide, please. I think we're almost there, by the way. Yeah, so our customers, I already talked a little bit about it. No TCO parity, so intrinsical motivated. You see customers like Innocent, they have highly on their list sustainability, and you see it in the whole brand, whether it's the bottle, whether it's the juice, everything has to do with sustainability. Some companies, like the supermarkets, they just want to make sure that they have all the knowledge in-house, want to be front runners, and some companies still, unfortunately, do it only for the marketing opportunity so that they can present a picture on front of their yearly sustainable report. But hey, for us, every customer counts, so we're quite happy with them. We work very closely with them to make sure that they have a good position, that they have all the knowledge to make the right decisions on time, to be on time for the whole transition. So it's a different cooperation between BREYTNER and their customers than when you operate a conventional company, where you only deal with prices and a transport purchaser. We have much more talks with sustainability management, board level management, to see where is the transition going, how fast is it going. And that is much more interesting. It gives a different place at the table. They accept the fact that it's much more expensive, and just trying to make sure that together we are, ready for the right moment. Next slide, please. Yeah, the truck OEMs, where are they at the moment? I think they're taking big steps. The question earlier asked about production being ready on time. I think all big truck companies have made their their production lines ready for zero emission trucks. And they can produce quite a bit, and they're scaling up at the moment because they see demand rising. We see Volvo being in the lead very much, with Renault following up, and we see Mercedes trying to catch on, and Scania as well. Scania already has now trucks that can be ordered with the battery pack of 630 kilowatt hours. And if you look at our current rigids that are converted, they have 280 kilowatt hours on board, and the new Volvos have 540 kilowatt hours on board. So you see that the developments go very, very fast. So we believe that maybe in 2 or 3 years we would see a range of about 700 to 1,000 kilometers. 500 kilometers that are being supported by battery packs of 700 to 1,000 kilowatt hours. That will be maybe the sweet spot that we think is it's going on. Hydrogen we see lacking behind very much, because the truck OEMs are basically focusing on getting production for battery electric trucks on the road. They are developing hydrogen behind the scenes very much, but it won't be ready for production before 27. Next slide. Our main learnings: trucks run stable. Battery degradation of the battery packs has been very good. All our trucks have been surveyed by either TNO or universities that follow up on our trucks daily, and we are very enthusiastic about that. We see the autonomous range improving, as I just mentioned, and we see opportunity charging during unloading or loading as the sweet spot to not lose out on any more time. Charging in general is a big challenge. How to organize your charging, how to organize cheap electricity. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that is coming for us. Next, and I think final slides. Oh yeah, there we are. Yeah, so ask me anything. I see a question in, I've kind of missed the
Thank you,
question. So maybe,
Marie-José,
yeah.
for the presentation. Actually, there are a few questions for you, and eventually I can help you there. Question is, how did the rise in energy prices, both diesel and electricity, affect profitability? So you briefly went into that, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit further.
Yeah. So when we started with the rigid trucks, we only had overnight charging, and I think we had about electricity prices of 15 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on where we had our truck stations. If we had them stationed near our customers that are big users of electricity, we could even reach up to 6 or 7 cents per kilowatt hour. So nowadays we're way up high and with 30, 40 cents per kilowatt hour, which makes it much more difficult. And what we try to do is we try to figure out every time we engineer a new logistical setup with our customer, we try to look at, okay, what are our customers' processes? Do they use a lot of energy? If so, they probably have huge energy contracts, and it's better to station the trucks or try to buy the energy for the trucks through our customer, or even sometimes through the supplier of the customer. So we're trying to be very creative with electricity within the TCO to make sure that we do not have to pay public electricity charging prices. So if I would go to a Shell or a Total or a Fastnet in the Netherlands, which we now and then have to do by occasion, we pay about differs between €1.03 per kilowatt hour and 70 or 75 cents per kilowatt hour, which is, yeah, it doesn't make the TCO any more interesting. And it will just attract less customers. So we're trying to be really, really creative with that. So far it works. What makes it difficult is that you need high um, you need fast charging infrastructure that can reach at least 150 kilowatts or preferably 300 kilowatts. And that brings high investments with it, because not only the charger, which could be maybe like 50,000 euros, but furthermore, the transformer that you need and the cables that go into the ground, which bring the main investments, 200,000-300,000 euros is nothing. And if you have a small fleet, it will only be 1 or 2 trucks running over this fast charging infrastructure, and that makes it incredibly difficult to get a good business case going. So what you see is our customers, we try to get the infrastructure as being part of, for instance, a building, and that we can depreciate it over a little bit longer time to make the investment press little less on the business case itself. We try to find as much subsidies we can, but for infrastructure, there is not so much subsidy there. So if anybody knows within this group of a European subsidy for infrastructure, please let us know, because we are really interested in sharing our knowledge and experiences with infrastructure, but it's difficult to get it going. Is that an answer to the question? I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. And then very detailed actually. And I think we have. I don't know if we can go over all the questions. So maybe I may ask you, Maria said that you can answer those ones through the chat later. But I
I
will
will.
take it still. We can take the next one. Uh, and then it's uh, based on your initial experience 2015. You were retrofitting the trucks, so then to get your electric trucks, now you can buy them. And it's if how this has evolved, and if it's cheaper now or more competitive to get trucks from the OEMs directly than to convert them. That's the question.
Yeah. To give you an idea, the converted trucks have been more expensive, between 350,000 for the rigids to start with in the beginning days in 2015, up to 400,000 for the tractor units. But if we look at current level of truck OEMs, it doesn't differ much, to be honest, because when we bought the first Volvos, um, maybe a little bit cheaper, but not very much. And we see now currently prices are rising. And that was disappointing, because we expected, okay, truck OEMs are stepping in, prices will drop because they have a bigger volume that they can purchase in battery packs, and you'll make, if you look at in general the electric drivetrain, it is much less difficult than an internal combustion engine. And they so it should be cheaper, much cheaper to construct in general. But I think that truck OEMs, I'm not sure if anybody's present today, but and if they're willing to comment, but they're trying to get all the development costs, because it's a big shift between developing diesel engines or an electric drivetrain, that they want to shift all these big investments for the first development onto the first phase vehicles as well, instead of spreading it out over maybe 10 years. So that's a little bit my gut feeling. Hopefully by 2024, 25, when you see the push coming from the European Union, prices will drop. It should in the end, because it's just much less complex to build.
Competition, it's always good to
Yeah,
lower prices.
maybe like the push, if Tesla is bringing their truck to market in Europe, and we have invested in the first Tesla truck in 2017. We're still waiting currently to get the truck, but we're patient. Hopefully, that Tesla could maybe be a disruptor. Nikola is a little bit difficult at the moment. They're in trouble, what I hear. But those kinds of disruptors, maybe the hydrogen truck coming from, and I have to say it right, I think it's Mitsubishi. No, so Hyundai. Maybe that could be a push as well. But for now, they're in the monopoly position, truck OEMs. Performance isn't particularly much better than the converted trucks, by the way, because the conversion trucks the companies have been working in converting these trucks for many years now, and they've gained many more kilometers experience than the truck OEM. So we're also experiencing now some downtime with OEM trucks, as they have to learn to step in this world as well at the moment. Children to
Okay.
sing, I think.
Yeah, that's very good. Then there is the last one. You can be very brief, otherwise we are going beyond the
Sorry.
time.
Yeah.
No, but it's not. It's the interest of the audience, and yeah, you are working with these tracks and with your with the freight forwarders and the shippers. The question is that which are the best ways that shippers and logistics service providers, freight forwarders, can work with carriers to overcome the cost of or operational issues of e-tracks. So then, from your perspective, how your customers and the customers of your customers could help you to really get a best case.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we always do with our customers is we work on board level, high level, and we work 9 out of 10 times with something like an open calculation. So we show exactly what our investments are, and we try to tweak together to get the best engineering of our logistical setup. So sometimes they need to change their current systems or processes, which is not something that they like, but could be a way to optimize our runs, either meaning different opening hours so that these trucks can run more hours than normal diesel trucks would run, to trying to compete more with the diesel TCO and the diesel business case. Or either use swap trailers, swap and drop systems that they're not used to. But everything has to be taken into account and has to be looked over again, and there should be no hard barriers when you start these processes. Just start with a blank sheet and see how far you can go, and really work together. And invest for the longer term. So, because if you can make a commitment for, let's say, 5, 6, or 7 years together, then prices will drop as well, because the risk is not only there for the haulier, but you share the risk, and that helps.
Okay, thank you very much, Marie-José. If you could address the questions in the chat,
Yeah,
there are
I
still a
will.
few for you. Thank you for all
I'll
the
try that.
insights. They were really great. And
Thank you for
then we
having
need
me.
to, yeah, I know it's very great. Good.